Mangona ni mwalilepo fukenjani Klekwas Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show that is the source for the latest stories, updates from across the continent. From political developments and economic shifts to social issues and entertainment, we bring you the top stories shaping Africa today. In this edition, Uganda deploys troops to South Sudan as tensions rise. Kenya faces backlash over church donations, and the US aid freeze disrupts HIV treatment in Kenya and Botswana. Rorisang Mohojwe brings more of the latest reports from Botswana, plus find out which African countries are the least stressed in 2025. You are with Africa Good Morning on DSTV 285, GoTV 25, oneup2.com, and Network Media Hub on YouTube. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to Namibia, where adventure meets tranquility. With Enjoy, you have access to a wide range of accommodations to suit every traveler's taste and budget. Experience the finest dining and hospitality Namibia has to offer. Booking your dream accommodation is just a few clicks away with Enjoy. Join thousands of happy travelers who have trusted Enjoy for their Namibian getaway. Your gateway to unforgettable Namibian adventures. Visit us today at enjoy.my.na.
Let's get into the top stories. Uganda has deployed an unknown number of troops to South Sudan in a bid to protect the fragile government of President Salva Kiir as a tense rivalry with his deputy threatens a return to civil war in the East African nation. Ugandan special forces have been deployed to Juba, the South Sudanese capital, to support the government of South Sudan against a possible rebel advance on the city, said Major General Felix Kulagige, a spokesperson for the Ugandan military. We sent a force there 2 days ago, he said. We are not there for peacekeeping. In deploying Ugandan soldiers to Juba, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni moved as a guarantor of the peace process that keeps Kiir and Machar together in a delicate government of national unity. Now, Kulayige told the Associated Press Kiir and Museveni are allies, and Museveni has in the past intervened in the South Sudan conflict to keep Kiir in power. The deployment of Ugandan troops to South Sudan underscores rising tensions in the oil-producing country that has been plagued by political instability and violence since it gained independence from Sudan in 2011. The U.S. on Sunday ordered non-emergency government personnel to leave Juba. The UN is warning of an alarming regression that could erase years of hard-won progress in South Sudan. The latest tensions stem from fighting in the country's north between government troops and a rebel militia known as the White Army that's widely believed to be allied with Machar. Last week, a South Sudanese general was among several people killed when a United Nations helicopter on a mission to evacuate government troops from the town of Nasir, the scene of the fighting in Upper Nile State, was shot at earlier in the week after the White Army overran the military garrison in Nasir. Government troops surrounded Machar's home, and this was in Juba, and several of his allies were arrested. Deputy Army Chief General Gabriel Duop Lam, who is seen as loyal to Machar, was among those detained. Civil war erupted in South Sudan in late 2013 when a rift between Kiir and Machar escalated into fighting along ethnic lines. Now, Kiir and ethnic Dinka accused a group of soldiers loyal to Machar and ethnic Nuer of trying to take power by force. Kenyan police used tear gas to disperse protesters attempting to occupy the Jesus Winner Ministry in Nairobi, a church that has recently received a US $155,000 donation from President William Ruto. The donation sparked criticism from young Kenyans grappling with the high cost of living. They argue that public funds should address pressing economic issues rather than church contributions. The protests saw clashes, road blockades, and a arrests which occurred amid heightened security as the church service proceeded. In 2024, Kenya's Catholic and Anglican leaders rejected Ruto's donations, arguing that there was a need to protect the church from being used for political purposes. Ruto defended his actions and offered a similar gift to another church in Eldoret. Kenyans have been angered by a series of tax increases, accusing the government of waste and corruption, leading to nationwide protests and the withdrawal of the finance bill. Staying with Kenya, Kenya's capital, Nairobi, has been rationing supplies of antiretrovirals to 1-month refills since the U.S. government froze foreign aid. On the outskirts of the city, meanwhile, millions of life-saving doses sit on the shelves of a warehouse, unused and unreachable. Without U.S. funding, distribution from the warehouse, which stocks all U.S. government-donated HIV medicine to Kenya, has ceased, leaving supplies of some drugs worryingly low, according to a former USAID official and a health official in Kenya. The 90-day foreign aid freeze ordered by the U.S. President Donald Trump after taking office on January 20 has upended the global supply chain for medical products to fight HIV and other diseases. It is also blocking the distribution of drugs that long ago reached their destination countries. The State Department issued a waiver last month exempting funding for HIV treatment from the freeze, but the USAID payment system in Kenya is down after the cuts, meaning contractors who implement the programs cannot be paid, said Mackenzie Knowles-Corson, who was the deputy head of communications for USAID, and that is in East Africa, until resigning on February 3 in protest at the dismantling of the agency. In Kenya, officials in Washington have not authorized the release of money required to distribute the $34 million worth of medicine and equipment at the warehouse. He added, according to a Kenyan government document seen by Reuters, about $10 million is needed for that distribution. Now we swing over to Botswana, but it is actually a very similar update. The U.S. funding freeze has severely impacted HIV programs in Botswana, causing immediate disruptions in services and uncertainty for affected communities. On 27 February, civil society organizations received termination letters leading to the closure of drop-in centers and interruptions in HIV testing, treatment and support services, with service providers no longer working and no proper handover of client files. Clients face confusion and difficulties in accessing care through government facilities. In response, the Ministry of Health in Botswana has reassured continued access to ART services and formed a task team. CSOs and UN agencies, including UNAIDS, are monitoring the situation. Meanwhile, the EU has confirmed significant budget cuts in development financing, but pledged to honor its HIV commitments until 2027, though these funds will not compensate for the US cuts. Despite the crisis, CSOs have demonstrated resilience by conducting rapid impact assessments and engaging in multi-stakeholder discussions facilitated by UNAIDS. The UN has played a key role in convening meetings to address the issue, but the future remains uncertain as stakeholders await further guidance. Now, in the last of our top stories, life can be stressful, but some places in the world offer a more relaxed and balanced environment. While Africa is often perceived as a continent grappling with economic instability, several countries stand out for their ability to provide a relatively stress-free life. The 2025 Global Emotions Report, published by CEO World magazine, provides insight into global stress levels by ranking the most and least stressed countries worldwide. Conducted between December 2, 2024 and January 12, 2025, the study surveyed people in 197 countries and territories, asking whether they felt a lot of stress. The previous day, over a third of respondents admitted to experiencing high stress. The study evaluated 4 major stress factors: work, money, social and family life, and health and safety. Based on these criteria, Monaco emerged as the least stressed country in the world, scoring 83.83 on the stress index. In 2025, Seychelles ranks as the least stressed country in Africa with a total stress index of 71.48, placing it 57th globally. Following closely is Mauritius, which holds holds the second spot in Africa, ranking 77th worldwide. Gabon secures third place with 61.86 points, 87th globally, while Equatorial Guinea ranks fourth in Africa with 60.13, placing 94th globally. Now, Botswana takes the fifth spot, and this is with a stress index of 57.7, ranking 102nd in the world. Libya follows in sixth place with a score of 55.52, ranking 107th globally, just ahead of South Africa, which is 7th in Africa and 108th worldwide. Algeria ranks 8th with a stress index of 53.4, coming in at 114th globally. Cape Verde, with a score of 50.56, ranks 9th in Africa and 121st in the world. Completing the top 10 is Namibia, which holds a stress index of 49.3, placing it 125th globally. Those have been our top stories on Africa. Good morning. After the break, we'll be getting the Botswana report from Rorisang Mohojwe.
Welcome to Namibia, where adventure meets tranquility. With Enjoy, you have access to a wide range of accommodations to suit every traveler's taste and budget. Experience the finest dining and hospitality Namibia has to offer. Booking your dream accommodation is just a few clicks away with Enjoy. Join thousands of happy travelers who have trusted Enjoy for their Namibian getaway. Your gateway to unforgettable Namibian adventures. Visit us today at enjoy.my.na.
All right, it's time for us to talk to Rorisang Mohojwe. She brings us the news stories from Botswana, also known as our Botswana Report. Good morning, Rorisang. Welcome to Africa. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me on this wonderful Wednesday morning. Always a pleasure to be right here with everyone on Africa. Good morning.
All right, Rorisang, Lobate MP Kamal Jacobs has withdrawn claims that President Duma Boko and his bodyguard threatened him.
Well, this story did make headlines, especially last week. It had a lot of people, especially politicians and the general public, in shock as to how a whole entire president of a country could, allegedly threaten one of his own members of parliament within his own party. So what happened was that last week, this particular MP, raised a question in parliament, basically questioning the appointment of the chief of staff within government. He questioned the process of appointing a chief of staff, and he also asked whether or not this was a political appointment or not. And then shortly after that, he came back to Parliament and reported the incident to the Speaker of Parliament, saying that he had allegedly received threatening messages from President Duma Boko as well as his bodyguard. And reports have circulated on social media that the message or the threatening message in question was really the president asking how he could question procedures within his own party, which, according to him, allegedly amounted to treason. So really, social commentators as well as political analysts were saying that this was not a threat, but it was rather a legit question from the president, asking how he could question some procedures within government, especially on a platform like Parliament, as opposed to going to consult as to how some of the government procedures are done. And then as the story developed, he did say this particular member of parliament, Kamal Jacobs, told the media that he had reported the incident to the police because he felt like his life was being threatened and he could not sleep. He was on edge, and there was no comment. There was no official comment from the office of the president, nor from the press secretary to the president. And now yesterday, he came back to Parliament and retracted his statement of these alleged threats. He U-turned and said no, he apologizes for that, and he really just takes it all back. And a lot of analysts and commentators, as well as the general members of public, are quite shocked. They are quite surprised as to how an entire legislator could make such damning allegations and then come back and U-turn on these before anybody even has a chance to investigate. So really, the jury is still out on that one. Nobody really knows what really happened, or if it actually anything did happen, because we still have not been able to reach him. We still have not been able to talk to him regarding these threats. Nobody has really heard from the member of parliament except for his own legislators within the party, his fellow party members. But at this current point in time, we do know that today he took his statements back. He retracted the allegations that he posed against the president and against his bodyguard.
All right, Rory Sang, very interesting story indeed. Now, Justice Minister Nelson Ramautwana blames rising bail approvals on severe judicial staff shortages.
Well, the Botswana Police Service has continued to report an increasing or a rising number of criminal activities. And, members of the public have also expressed concern that a number of these criminal activities are actually being carried out by individuals who are out on bail, and it seems like majority of these offenders are actually repeat offenders. And now, to address this concern, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Facilities has actually come out and attributed the rising number of criminals being granted bail to severe shortages of judges, as well as court staff and personnel within the Attorney General's chambers and within really the justice system in the country. He did mention the fact that he had a meeting with magistrates as well as the Court of Appeal judges, and the Minister Nelson Ramautwana highlighted that they are faced by an overwhelming workload. There is, the judiciary is faced by an overwhelming workload, which has since delayed case proceedings and has led to many of these bail approvals. And public concerns have really grown over repeat offenders roaming the streets. But the minister stressed that under the Constitution, all individuals are entitled to a fair trial, and if the judges or the magistrates are seeing it fit to approve bail or to give bail to the suspects or the people who are facing trial, then so be it. But the bottom line that he was trying to make was that the judiciary, the members of the judiciary or the court system are actually facing an overload in terms of their work, and there's also a shortage of resources. Hence, there's a lot of bail approvals. However, the lack of resources has also strained the system, and it has affected judicial decisions like granting bail. However, members of the public are saying, listen, just lock these people up and we will see the criminal activities rates going down. We will see crime going down on the streets, because a number of individuals who are actually committing these crimes are repeat offenders who are out on bail, and it seems like they're getting away with it. And the minister was simply saying, no, it's not that they're getting away with it. Number one, they are entitled to a free trial. Number two, the judiciary is overwhelmed and there is a shortage of staff or personnel. And still on that very same note, 400 individuals are currently awaiting trial for murder cases, and this has also raised concerns about the delay in the criminal justice system and its impact, the impact that it has on violence, within the society. And again, members of the public continue to argue that, the backlog that the judiciary or the court system is facing is actually fueling a rise in some of these violent crimes that we see that are being perpetrated, that are being committed, and these perpetrators remain free. They continue to walk the streets and for extended periods of time. I mean, if 400 individuals are currently waiting trial and they're currently on bail, then what use is there, for the judiciary? What are they doing if they are not actually putting these guys behind bars? And some of these delays, they are prolonging the suffering of victims, and that's what victims as well as their families, their loved ones, and they are also weakening the confidence that the public has in the justice system. And in Parliament, there was a huge debate about this, and lawmakers, seem to agree with members of the public that the government needs to undertake a comprehensive review, which is aimed at expediting serious cases, to ensure that lawlessness remains, to ensure that the wills of justice prevail and that there is no lawlessness on the streets, and to ensure swift as well as effective justice.
Rory Sang. To close off the show, an industry expert, Leroy Nyoni, says Botswana's creative sector lacks strong policies, which is limiting its potential. Tell us more.
So, as we jump into the business of entertainment, or the business of the creative sector, really, a lot of creative industry stakeholders and players are saying that the lack of, or rather the absence of really strong policies and frameworks that formalize as well as manage the country's creative sector is actually hindering its potential to tackle unemployment in the country. We have, spoken, or rather, let me just say, government has come out to say a lot of the times that the creative sector holds so much potential to actually help with the unemployment crisis in the country, as well as to help with the growth of the country's economy, to basically contribute to the GDP of the economy. Now, industry stakeholders are saying that there needs to be a comprehensive review as well as a strengthening of policies and frameworks that are going to govern the creative sector. And one of these stakeholders and one of these creative industry players is Leroy Nyoni, who is a director of All Is Music. All Is Music is a creative solutions consultancy that is based here in Botswana, and he was basically coming out to say, listen, we have seen that regulations governing the industry, particularly music, are still very much in their early or in their infancy stages in the country, and therefore growth is limited in that instance, and therefore the government needs to adopt some strategies, or really benchmark strategies that have worked in other countries like Nigeria, like Kenya, like South Africa, just as examples of countries that have made a success of the creative sector and have transformed the sector into a high income industry. And he was basically calling for urgent interventions and maybe to benchmark on some of these countries, as well as to just adopt strategies that could transform Botswana's creative sector into a high income sector. And what All Music is doing right now is trying to spotlight the creative sector's potential, all things musical. Right now, what they're trying to do, or an event that is happening for the first time in the country, they are going to host a simulcast, or what we call a radio broadcast, which is going to go across 2 private stations in the country. It has never really been done before, especially for this amount of time, from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. These private radio stations include Gabs FM as well as Duma FM. So there's going to be a show that will, be broadcast across the 2 radio stations, to showcase how traditional radio can merge with digital live streaming and create or enhance audience reach in that instance. And what is expected to come out of this obviously is commercial growth.
All right. We had to abruptly say goodbye there to Rorisang Mohojwe, but do catch up for the Botswana report, which will also be on our social media. From me, Ashwin Betty, and the Africa Good Morning team on DSTV 285, Go TV 25, oneup2.com, and Network Media Hub on YouTube. Swera Jaganaka.